2 1 2 1 2 1 2. All right. Hello, heroes. This is episode 9 of the Tuesday Tournament Reviews. In this series, I have a guest who brings me a tournament, and we go through all the questionable hands together. This week, my guest is, check this out, Discord server regular Hattie009, also known as Nick. And yeah, this is the second or third episode with you.
Yeah, third one.
All right. 1 second. Okay, so the voice is fine. I need to fix your webcam, and yeah, you are back. All right. Yeah, this is the third episode. Yeah, right.
Yeah, third one.
Yeah. All right. If I'm right, we were somewhere in the middle, like 120th hand.
Yeah, somewhere on there. It was starting to get a bit deep, deeper.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Check This Site. Check This Site is a tool. I'm actually the founder of checkthisite.com. It is a tool to share and review full tournaments. So what happened is that Nick uploaded this tournament to his profile, and I visited his profile. I opened this tournament and I clicked all the hand through. You can see that I'm facing the same decisions as he did when playing the hand. So I can imitate his decisions. And if I say I'm folding these pocket deuces, then the hand always continues as according to his original play. So the next decision I have to make as if I called with pocket deuces. And then let's say I call, and once again my decision didn't match his, and yeah, the hand continues, and this time I matched his decision more or less, but the sizing is different, and the hand is over, and you can see that I barely match his decisions, and this is a hand we should probably talk about. And if I open this multibar and I select my username, then we can see that like which hands we should talk about and which hands would be a waste of time to discuss, because we basically play the same. So we went through the first 120 hands, and we are getting closer. Or do you remember where the bubble was?
I can't. No, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, this Ace suited was the last hand we discussed. So let's continue with this pair of kings. And yeah, this is a tricky situation. Obviously, you have kings, so we are pretty happy about this one. But it's not super easy to extract the maximum value in this situation, because you have some shorties behind you, and also the under the gun opener is quite shallow, so you have to decide whether you want to slow play this or 3-bet. If I have many shorties behind me, or an aggressive button, or some aggro guys, then I prefer flatting this. With aces, I would flat close to 100% of the times. With kings, probably 3-betting is a little bit better, but it's questionable. It really depends a lot on the other guys. Whether the if the undergun opener is a loose guy, then I would prefer leaving all his weak hands in and just call. If he's on the tighter side, then probably you do better by 3-betting and getting immediate action. Yeah, we have Kovmiki on board. Hello, and also Pelady90, big regular of the show. Very well welcome, guys. And if you have any question or comment about the plays, then please share those ideas with us. And yeah, the hand continues as you played, which was a 3-bet, which is completely fine. It's really a close spot. And yeah, the flop is fine. You may get a little bit scared of the 10 like double tens on the board on the flop, but whenever you put a situation like this into a solver, it basically ignores the trips with this shallow of a stack. Like if he has 10x, then you are toasted anyway, so you will pay him off. So you should rather focus on his draws and his queen x and maybe some other random hands he is willing to give action with, but mostly like queen x and draws. And as you quite heavily block the draws, you may even want to consider checking behind, and then you can get some bluffs from hands like ace jack, or later action from hands like 9s, 7s, 8s, or middling pocket pairs, which may fold to a c-bet here. But c-betting once again is completely fine. You probably want to go by this really tiny bet. This heavily favors your 3-bet range as well. He also has a lot of connection, but you have probably the super nuts, so you can see bet quite wide here. And the turn is a tricky one. Obviously, this is one of the few cards which you don't want to see here. But like the obviously checking back and building a check back range here with way less than 1 SPR, stack to pot ratio, is completely fine. You may 3-bet some ace-x hands here. Do you have any light 3-bets in this spot?
Yeah, sometimes 3-bet suited aces like ace 8, ace 7, ace 6. It depends really. Maybe not in this exact spot with the shorties behind, because I wouldn't want to end up having to put it all in if they're jammed. So I wouldn't have any light ace x in this particular spot.
Yeah, this is probably an important question. If you are up against a really tough guy, then you probably have to check behind some. If you want to build a check behind range, then you probably want to check behind some like ace queen maybe, as blocking all the hands which could give you action. So then you want to semi trap those hands. And then those hands give some protection to your king x hands and your occasional king queen. Do you ever 3-bet king queen here?
Sometimes king queen off, but like I say, with shorties in the blinds, not in this particular spot.
Yeah, like with king queen, you are like somewhat comfortable 3-betting here, I think. Like against the 13 big blind stack, if you have to stack off, that's fine. Against the 18 big blind stack, it's not the end of the world, and he will have a very, very narrow range to get it in against an under the gun raiser and a +1 3-better. So I think king queen is a reasonable, king queen off is a reasonable 3-bet here, and then you have to protect that one as well. And yeah, but against weaker opponents in these situations, a very easy to execute strategy is to build a 1/4 bet on the turn, and basically buy yourself a showdown, which is obviously somewhat exploitable if he has like hands like, but it's not really easy to exploit. Like he can check jam with some hands like 9-8 of spades, or but very few combos.
So if he'd open 9-8 of spades here, and I won't say how much ace x he'd have as well, because I expect him to probably jam ace king, ace queen suited pre, I mean, he may have ace jack, but I don't think he'd continue with ace 10 pre-flopping. So I think his ace x is quite limited as well to probably just ace queen.
Yeah, like in this case, when his value range is like quite limited, because I share your opinion that he probably doesn't call with too many ace x hands pre-flop, and if he calls, then he probably folds many of those on the flop. So ace
Yeah,
is not that super scary a flop. In this case, you may just want to uh, induce a bluff on the river, because his range is very heavily weighted towards like nines, sevens, eights, which he may turn into bluffs sometimes. Then checking is completely fine, and probably planning to call the river in these special circumstances that you can narrow his range down. Yeah, the river was a very favorable one. You went for a big size bet, putting him all in. I really dislike this. Um, I just don't see how you can balance this with bluffs and what he could pay you off with.
yeah,
Do you have any idea?
yeah. I mean, I don't really have too many bluffs in this spot as it is, so I mean,
Yeah, you have all the
there's
full
nothing really.
houses,
Yeah,
and many straights as well. And yeah, your bluffs pre-flop are basically ace x small hands, which you probably don't want to turn into a bluff here.
yeah,
So I would go for a very tiny bet and praying for a call from ace jack, or yeah, some kind of ace x hand.
yeah. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
that could work. Theodore is also on the board. Hello, Theodore. Welcome to the show. Yeah. So a tiny little bet is probably better on the river. That's for sure. The rest of the hand is very questionable. If you can be fairly sure that he doesn't have too many ace x hands, and in this case we can say that's true, then you may do better by inducing a bluff on the river for the river.
Yeah,
Yeah, the next one is a questionable one. Like my default is to call here with ace ten off, and the
yeah,
charts say it's rather a call, but as it's very close to the bottom of the calling range, it's also fine to three bet. The main factor which I take into account before deciding to three bet or flat is probably the strength of the blinds as players. If they are strong players and I want to force them out of the pot, then I prefer to three bet rather than like being squeezed or overcalled with some hands that perform well against this particular holding. So
I like to mix ace 10 off in this spot from the bubble. I like to mix in some three bets and some flats.
yeah, very good. Yeah, you went for a three bet. I guess you had
Yeah,
some stats to back this up, or some other reads. He called, and on the flop you made a small three bet. Yeah, like obviously we would rather like to have some kind of connection to the board, with the ace of heart or something like that. But on the other hand, he also has a lot of like airish hands.
yeah.
Uh,
I was just attacking his like king queens, king jacks, jack tens,
yeah,
things like that.
not to pick up some and not to pick up any equity. Yeah, on flush draw textures, contrary to the common belief, on flush draw textures there are more airs in your opponent's range, because there are only two colors that
Yeah,
have some connection to this board, while on a rainbow texture you have to be afraid of three backdoor flash draws. So your opponent has a somewhat easier time to float you if he's that kind of a player. But yeah, c betting small is probably fine here. You will fold out enough hands with okay equity. You got a call, and the turn is a king, which is once again an interesting card. You went for a big bet, while I prefer a small bet here. This king is like really, really favorable for your range, and on the flop, I can easily imagine him calling with hands like um, sixes, fives, sevens. You agree with that, right?
Yeah, yeah, I agree with
and
that totally.
and maybe even some ace four suited, ace five suited type hands, and maybe some hands like ace jack with the ace of heart, or something like that. Ace queen with the ace of heart, definitely. And those hands probably simply fold for a 1 million-ish bet, just as well as for the big one. So
Yeah,
in these cases, when the turn is an overcard and favors your range very strongly, and your opponent has a lot of hands which dropped in value to like third pair or like complete air, ace high, etc., then you don't need to immediately fire a big one. You often have can have the same effect by just applying a one-third barrel on the turn, and then you can still decide whether you want to empty the clip on the river. This hand is okay to do that with. Um, yeah, not blocking the flush draw. Yeah, somewhat blocking some of the floats, but those fall on the turn anyway, so uh, not a big deal. Yeah, so definitely a smaller bet is fine.
so
If you are not sure whether you are like mentally capable of firing the third barrel on the river, then it may be good, especially against weaker opponents, to like put maximum pressure on the turn and giving up on the river. But this can lead to like situations, like very annoying situations, like him having some like ace queen of hearts, ace jack of hearts, um, those type of hands, and or like ace five of heart, ace six of heart, and rivering a six, and you could have easily like folded that out, and but you went for this strategy, so he called on the turn and won at showdown with a marginal holding.
yeah.
So
That's one of the reasons why I bet bigger to try and put maximum pressure on the flush draws and the middle in pairs.
mhm. Yeah, like but my
I don't
pro
think he'll fold any flush draws to the smaller bet.
yeah,
So
that's clear. But on this turn, like many of his flush draws are either like pair plus flush draws, or like gut shot plus flush draws, and those flush draws will not really fold. And also he has so many other really weak holdings like five, sixes, sevens, is that um
he'll still
yeah,
fold. Yeah,
yeah, and also the advantage of this bet, this small bet, is that you don't have to divide your ranges into two. Like if you apply this big a bet, then you are kind of forced to check with tens, jacks, queens, which are also still very likely to be ahead of his range. Or you want to divide your ranges into two, which is completely fine. In most of the cases, if you can apply two bet sizes and both of them are reasonably balanced, then it's very fine to do so. But I'm just afraid that it's harder to balance if you apply two bet sizes. Yep. While if you just apply a one third turn bet, then you can easily bet that with queens, jacks, tens, even it's nine sometimes. Yeah.
yeah,
All right. The next one where we disagreed was this king six of suit. The cope. Oh, he just limped with 40. This should not really be a case. With 40 big blind, like I'm a big advocate of limping with short stack from the button, as we may have discussed that earlier.
yeah.
uh,
I read the blog.
yeah, if both of the blinds are like short stack, then you do much better by building a limping range together with a narrow raising range, and then your opponent will have a much harder time to cause you trouble. This hand is actually pretty good for punishing a limp out of position. If I do limping, then the thing I would like to see as a 4x out of position isolation, because my limps do really good against all in isolation. I'm not worried, because then I can punish them with my strong hands if I limp those, because in all those cases I win the whole stack. That's no problem. But when they punish me with a 4x raise, then it makes it questionable whether they can exploit me. And this hand is okay to do that kind of raise with. You have quite a lot of immediate fold equity, and you have like some value post flop, but checking is also completely fine, especially that he didn't do the limping from 20 big blinds, he did it from 40 big blind. Then I actually prefer checking much more. And the flop is fantastic, the check is completely fine. There are a lot of hands which you are way ahead of, and there are a few hands which you are behind, but you have great playability. So yeah, checking is fine, calling is fine, and the turn is amazing. You decided to lead out and lead out big. Yeah, explain.
I thought he was more of a fun player with a limp, so I didn't expect him to fold like the ace of hearts or a strong 10. So I tried to put maximum pressure on and tried to get a call. I know leading the second card pairing is good for out of position from the blinds usually, but I went for the big size this time, like I said, because I put him as a fun player who wouldn't fold a strong 10 or maybe even a worse 6 than mine or the ace of hearts. So I tried to get maximum value that way.
Yeah, very good. Actually, I like it a lot. Like by default, my reflex was to lead out small, because as you said, this turn favors my range a lot, and whenever there is a turn which favors your range a lot, and your opponent therefore will check behind a lot, then you have to take the initiative and you have to do the betting yourself. And in these cases, by theory, you mainly want to lead out with a small sizing, especially with this kind of folding, which is not vulnerable at all. That was my reflex. But if you put the puzzle together, and we have seen a limp from with 40 big blinds, which is a good sign that he's actually a recreational player. I really like this bet. Yeah, you don't need to balance your ranges. You can just go big for value. That's completely fine. And you got raised. What do you think of this raise?
I wasn't like too panicky about it because obviously I think he'd raised his 10s pre-flop. I think the only full houses he's got is probably 2s. I was quite pleased with it. Again, we had the redraw to the heart, so I was never going to fold. It was always going to go in.
Yeah. Like my first feeling was being a bit afraid, like maybe we ran into some kind of flush. But yeah, as you have a high flush draw, so even if he has something like a low flush, then you still have decent equity. Obviously you are behind, but you are far from dead. Yeah, it doesn't really matter whether you just call or you put it in. Probably you do better by putting it in, just in case he made some silly mistake with like ace 10 with the ace of heart, or people do things like that, and then
I see a lot of fun players limping like kings and aces here, and then just go crazy, like trying to end the hand on the 10 when obviously it doesn't go well for them. So that's another option. I'm not sure what he had in this hand. I can't remember now.
Yeah, like it was pretty funny because he actually had aces, and
There you go. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's hard to imagine to play aces worse than he did. Let this be his problem.
Surprisingly, I've seen that a few times on the lower stakes.
Yeah. Yep. It's fine. If he happens to limp with monsters like this, then I like the big turn bet even more. So yeah, all these hands so far
Let's
were.
change that one to 100%, Luigi.
Excuse me.
We'll change that one to 100%.
Yeah. Sure. Like when I click through this, like I actually finished these 200 hands in like 1 hour or so. So I'm not saying I paid 100% attention to all the spots. This is rather just a quick pre-filtering, just to avoid talking a lot about hands where we basically agree. So
Yeah,
to make it a little bit more efficient, but it also shows like where um, your basic like autopilot decisions are not 100% correct. So you can even use this tool just to review your own tournaments, and it shows you where you play like too robotically to um, like
yeah.
really autopiloting. All right. Yeah, it's a fine call with 8-7 offsuit. Many players I see some beginners folding these type of foldings, but actually you have to call much wider than this. Like let me show you what you should call 60 big blinds, big blind versus say a small blind open. Even and I have to mention that like oh I think I have to switch to full screen, yeah. And I have to mention that these ranges are built in a way that the small blind raises to 3.5x, and you still have to, versus the small blind range, you still have to call hands like queen 4 of suit, queen 3 of suit most of the time, jack 5 of suit, 7-5 of suit, 5-3 of suit. So you really cannot fold too much in position with deep stacks. You have to trust your ability to be able to evaluate the decisions of your opponent and overperform with your hands. So let's switch back to the other view. Yeah, so it's a fine call, and you actually have to consider going much wider than this. And you got an interesting flop. You have much more sixes than your opponent does,
Yeah.
And with this deep of a stack, having sixes is a big advantage. Like if the stacks were like 15 big blinds each, then having trips would not be that big of a factor, because if your opponent has a flush draw or even just an open in there or something like that, he can jam over your raise, and you don't really put pressure on him. But with this deep of a stack, if you do a raise here, then he has to continue knowing that many times he's just drawing that. And this is a big advantage for doing a raise rather than floating, especially on low flops, like many times by the nature of the flop, is that there will be an overcard coming which he can barrel, and you either have to do a raise there with no hand no draw, or you just have to fold. And therefore raising is a much better strategy, and raising a lot, raising with your sixes right away is a much better strategy on these textures rather than compared to floating a lot and peeling a lot, because yeah, especially with this kind of holding which doesn't have a lot to lose, so your backdoors are like really weakish. You don't mind making a raise and folding to a raise, so and that's fine. And also you will very rarely be raised here, so you should not really worry about that. But you can put a lot of pressure on many of the ace high combinations or just random whatever's like he can do raises like king four of suit, who knows, and stuff like that. If I remember well, he made this raise with king tray, so if he does those kind of raises, then you can imagine how many high card hands he has, because this is not a texture where he will slow down and not fire a continuation bet, and that this just makes these kind of raises much better. And you also block some of the 6x hands he can have, 6-7, 8-6. That's amazing. And you block some of the flush draws he could continue with. You have some playability, some barrel equity on turns, like on a 10 or 9 turn you can probably barrel, on a 5 turn you can probably barrel or just check behind and take your equity. So it's like I don't really see any downside of the raise. Yeah,
I like it. I like it.
yeah, on the turn, you got a very favorable turn. Not an overcard. He cannot rep too much. So I like the bet, and I do like your sizing. You went for a big sizing, which is good exploitatively. I think people fold way more to these big sizes than to a small size. To a small size, they may call with ace king, ace queen, ace jack sometimes. For the big size, they almost always fold those holdings. This is what I see from my students. So I like this, but you unfortunately got a call. But fortunately, you got a 7 on the river. And yeah, like this is just for starters. Like I think we are ahead here like 80-90% of the time. But this doesn't necessarily make it for a value bet, for a successful value bet, because the definition of the value bet is that when you make the bet and you get called, then you still have to be ahead more than 50% of the time, and that will probably not be true. You will run into some flushes, you will run into some better one pair hands, and that's why we decided to check it down. I think that's fine. And yeah, he had this holding. I don't like his raise. It is not a terrible combination to raise against someone who overfolds the big blind, but he should go for like 3.5x, 4x if he does so, and he should definitely not attack someone as strong as Hattie, because
Keep talking, Luigi.
all right. You do a really good race recently, right? Like you had some nice New Year's.
I had a victory on a $20 game on New Year's Eve, and I won the Clásico, and I won the 33 grand on Saturday. Not Saturday night. Not last. Was it Saturday? I think it's Saturday. I think it was Saturday night. I won the 33 grand as well. So I had a very strong start to the year. So pleased.
Yeah.
Very pleased.
That's really amazing. I'm super happy for that.
Thank you.
All right, let's see this one. So you face an open, very easy call, and yeah, this is a flop very favorable for your opponent. He has all these strong king X, which you don't really have. He has the sets, you barely have any set. So he can c-bet this with his entire range, even like small sizing, because there are not many turns which favors your range or shifts equity advantage to your favor. So yeah, like normally, especially when you call with a gut shot which is not for the nuts, I would prefer calling only if I also have an additional equity like backdoor flush draw to it, because even if you hit the queen, it's not like you can check raise and put all the money in, especially with some ICM considerations already on. So I'm just not sure whether you can call this, but it's probably very borderline. I decided to check fold, and you decided to check call, which is probably okay.
For the bigger size, I'd have folded. It's just because it's like a small bet.
Mhm.
Like I said, he can do it with his full range, so I think it's not so bad of a call for a small size.
Yeah, but my problem is that when they see bet this texture and they got a call for a 1/4 bet or less than 1/3 bet, then they tend to barrel a lot on the turn,
Yeah,
especially on blank turns. So, like this means you will not get to showdown. You will not like reverse float them and bet on the river when they check on the turn. So it's
do you rather call a bet here with a jack, or would you rather call with the 10-9 where you've got more like nut or nut outs?
I definitely call much easier with the jack here or even with the six.
Yeah,
Yeah, because then if he barrels a lot on the turn, you can still peel with the jack or with even with the six sometimes. But with the 10-9, you your options are very limited. You just have to check fold most of the turn. But it's not like I'm not saying it's bad. It's just very very questionable. Should you be under like big ICM pressure, I would definitely be an advocate of folding on the flop. But like as you only risk a very small portion of your stack, it's probably okay. And
yeah,
you got the best possible turn card, and he actually makes a bet on the turn. And yeah, we both decided to check raise here. He has enough sets and two pairs. He more or less has to call with. If he has the ace 10, so be it. I mean, there is not much you can save anyways, but you definitely have to go for max value against the two pair sets and combo draws. So it's very very good. Yeah, I would even go for a bigger sizing because those hands which we mentioned, like the two pairs, the sets, and the combo draws, they basically call almost an unlimited sizing. Like
yeah,
probably if you go check raise all in, they still call you with pocket jacks or pocket queens or whatever.
yeah,
So I would go for a bigger sizing and yeah, create a more somewhat more value. But yep, it's fine. I would I would very rarely check raise bluff here, but I started to wonder what hands should I check raise bluff, and probably hands like um, 6x of clubs, like 6-5 of clubs or 6-4 of clubs, which blocks some of the very strong hands. He can have some pocket sixes. He could have some king six, queen six suited type hands, and yeah, that's fine. And you have some additional equity with the flush draw, but yeah, probably that's a good hand to check raise here if you want to do some check raising. The tricky thing about these kind of very connected high textures is that when you go for a big bluff, you mainly want to select hands or multi-street bluff. You mainly want to select hands which actually don't block anything or don't block the easiest Coco fold type hands. So if you are in the cutoff shoes, quite strangely, you mainly want to select hands which barely block anything. So rather than barreling with a hand like 10-8 or Jack 10, which blocks some two pairs and the straight as well, you rather want to go for hands like 4 tray of clubs or really really low, barely any equity, or pocket deuces, which only has like two outs to a potential
yeah,
strong hands, because it is more important not to block any of his Coco folds than to block the straights. Because if you block the straights, you also block hands like Jack 10, Queen 10, or even King 10 is very questionable call on the river versus a triple barrel. So obviously most of the time you call, but you don't want to block the pair plus straight draw, pair plus gotcha type hands. And actually this works pretty well even in the lowest stakes, you have to do some adjusting in the sizing. Like normally, you want to use big sizing on the turn and very big sizing on the river by theory against like strong players, but against like weakish players who would never ever consider folding a top pair against your triple barrel, then you can do some like tricky adjustments, like betting extremely small on the turn, betting medium size on the turn, betting extremely small on the flop, and this has the advantage that if they flop king jack, king six, jack six, or pocket six, they won't slow play against a tiny bet. They will check raise that, and that's it. You you save some money. You were planning to fire, so you're happy about that. And if they just check call, then they are more likely to be weak. And on the turn, you can start putting pressure on them, but not really trying to fold out these type of pair plus gut shot, pair plus open in their hands. You just want to make a medium sized bet to make them scared, but make sure that they still continue with all those hands. And if you are lucky enough to get a blank river, then you can execute another like half pot size bet, and not aiming to fold out any queen x or better. You are just targeting or king x or better. You are just targeting jack x, queen x, busted flush draws, 6+ flush draw type hands, and that's actually a quite good strategy, even against like really weak players calling stations. You can fire these type of bluffs.
Yeah, nice.
Yep. And this was a little bit overly aggro, but I guess you had some reasons behind it.
I think this is somewhere near the bubble. I think that's all I want to do this usually. It started putting some pressure on some of the more middling stacks around the bubble. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. So this was around the bubble or the final table bubble? I guess it was rather close to the final table, right?
Yeah, it must be late on. I remember thinking I'm going to start putting a bit of pressure on now with my bigger stack.
Uh-huh. Yeah, like I would, if I happen to 3-bet here, I would go for a little bit bigger sizing. But yeah, this is fine as well. Like it's a very cheap bluff, and he still has to he still have to fold has to fold some offsuit broadways, offsuit ace-x type hands. So yeah, it's probably okay. Obviously not standard. It's not in the charts, but when you are the bigger stack and you have some loose middling stacks who open too much but fold too much, then it's perfectly fine to apply some extra pressure. You like the basic rule of 3-betting is that the more players you have behind you, the more blockers you need, just to avoid some like unlucky situations when you make a perfectly fine 3-bet against the opener, but the guys behind you wake up with ace king or ace queen or something like that. So
I wouldn't have done this one like MP, for example. It's just more of a cut-off button kind of strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I'm just mentioning that probably if you take a king deuce suited that and extend your 3-bet range to that direction, that will work even better. But
Better blockers.
yeah, but I don't mind the 3-bet at all. And I guess you are on somewhere like the last 3 tables.
Yeah, I think it seems like we're deep.
Yeah, and yeah,
18 million chips, so it must be very late on now.
Mm-hmm. Maybe last 2 tables, yeah.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
But not the final table yet.
No, I don't think so. I've got another, what's that, 90 hands, so can't be on the final table yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like normally you would not like to do any raising here against a reasonably aggro sticky guy. But given that you can already put some icing pressure on them, I would use some of these like high and low disconnected, very weak playability, but some blocker effect type hands to make a steal with a big sizing. Um, Obviously, you have to be very selective who you do this against, who you try this against, and but against most of the mid stakes guys, I think this works fine. Limping is also okay,
I,
especially.
I don't like your race because it's kind of in like shove or fold territory.
Excuse me.
I said I don't like your race because the big blind's kind of going to have to shove or fold. He's got no really, can't really like call such a big race with 22 big blinds there. I don't think.
So you don't like it?
No, I don't. I don't like it, like because the big blind, if he calls a 4x of 22 big blind stack, is kind of in. He's better off just playing shove or fold rather than flat calling 4x's in this spot.
I still really don't really get you. So you think he has too great a spot to reshove on you, or?
No, no. With your 4x raise, like the big blind, I think he's either going to shove or fold. Like he's never going to like play any like weak middling hands.
Yeah. That's why I think this is a good sizing to put pressure on them, because most of the guys say that, okay, I'm not going to defend like 10-7 of suit against this type of raise deep in a tournament. There are some weak players probably around, and yeah, most of the guys convince themselves not to do those mandatory
Yeah,
pails.
I
And
agree.
yeah, the flop is interesting. Like this deep in a tournament, you should um, anticipate that they have more ace-x hands than they normally would. Like in mid stages, they often tend to just jam all the ace-x hands on you or raise most of them. But deep in the tournament, they get more cautious, more tricky, and they actually have some ace-x holdings. But still, this is an okay flop for your range. But on the other hand, he has many hands like many connection to the bottom of this flop, like low straight draws, middling straight draws, 8x hands, 5x hands. So against a strong player, you probably don't want to bet too much on this texture. With this hand, it's like very questionable. You have some barreling equity, like you can barrel on a 4, on a tray, or on a spade, probably on many middling cards between the 8 and the ace. So actually, I don't mind betting here, but checking is also fine. And you face a big size or rather big size bet. I think I would just check fold here, but it's also very questionable. I just don't see how you can get to this showdown and what you are going to represent by this kind of play. You mainly represent 8x hands.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you will just have a hard time over realizing with this line. And I also think that most of the guys just don't bet this texture, these ace high textures, too wide. Um, and the turn is once again an interesting hand, giving you some equity, but also giving some strong hand to the other guy. So a check is in place, and you face a huge bet or quite big bet, and you have a naked non-nut flush draw out of position, and you will have a very hard time getting money in when you actually hit your spade. Like
yeah.
maybe you can work on a leading strategy on the river. Probably you should have some leading. Yeah, like if you do some leading on spade river, just make sure that you also turn some of your weakest turn calls into a bluff, if you can. Like you have
Perfect.
some 8, like let's say the river is something like the jack of spades, then probably you should turn something like 8-7 of heart into a bluff, I would say.
Yeah.
With a 5x, I'm just not seeing you check calling too much, like maybe with 6-5. So yep. But by like isolated, this call will probably not make you profit. If you have a proper bluffing and betting strategy on the river, then you may turn this into a profitable call.
Yeah.
I slightly doubt it, to be honest. And yeah, the turn is or the river is a interesting card. You have some 9-7, you have some 9-8, you have some flush. You definitely have some flushes. For example, with a hand like King Jack, King X of spades, Queen X of spades. It's very fine to check call on the flop and check call on the turn. So I liked your decision, what you made, that you said that I don't really get into this situation with worse hand than this one. I think we can agree on that. You
Yeah.
have some blockers to the flushes. You don't block some of his potential bluffs like 10-7, check 10 if he happened to bet that on the flop. And therefore your hand is quite good for running a gangster bluff. But I like, my main concern is that I just don't see many strong hands folding.
Yeah.
Like the thing that he bet this flop and bet this turn really strongly, I would be a little bit scared that his range may be too strong, like straights, 9x
Yeah.
hands, flushes as well. So overall, I think, like, by theory, your play is actually fine. Probably like the blocker effect is okay. Also, the reverse blocker effect, not blocking his bluffs, that's fine. That also helps your bluff that they have some auto folds, and but yeah, I
Yeah.
just have bad
I see what
feelings.
you're saying. Like it would have bet too like on the flop and turn, like so deep in a tournament. So it's kind of pushing him more to the value side of things.
Yeah, like I can imagine this bluff being slightly profitable, but I have hard time believing that it's massively profitable, and you're risking a lot of chips. And normally you are in very good position, so I would be very careful with these big moves.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it bad at all, but yeah, sometimes you will have to deal with situations like this. All right, let's see the next one. The raise is completely fine. And yeah, you can raise 2.2 or min raise as well. Not much of a deal. And the flop is interesting. Against weaker guys, you can see bet quite a lot. They have a lot of auto folds. I would restrict myself to bet with broadways or this kind of hands which at least block a backdoor flush draw, and more give up on hands which actually block those hands which I want to fold out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what I did, but I think checking is fine. My bet is probably a mistake. Against weaker guys, it can be profitable, but mostly I want to just check. And if he happened to check behind, I would try to make a bluff here. I'm not sure if I want to use this big of a size. I think just betting small. Once again, like no. I think your check is fine. You don't have to win all the pots. And on the river,
I think we chopped quite a lot now, so I didn't really see much point in bluffing. Well, I hope I didn't bluff.
Yeah, I'm just not sure like how many times he will call for a chop. Do you think he would take something like King 10 and call you here?
Not sure, but I think he should expect me to bet an ace before the river. So I'm not really repping much. Maybe I might have checked back sevens or eights or something like that. What I could get value from.
Yeah, but on the other hand, like, what should be afraid of? Should we be afraid of? Like, what non-chopping hands can we run into? Like,
Yeah,
pocket
yeah,
fives, maybe sometimes. Yeah, but I take that risk. I just don't want to give the half of the pot to him, so I would I would try it. But yeah, it's once again, it's not mandatory by any means.
yeah.
All right, let's go with this one. The call is fine. Yeah, on this texture, you can probably get away with betting close to your range. By theory, you should still be very careful and only bet like 40-50% of the times, but um, against normal non-theoretical opponents, you can safely bet close to your range on any texture with 2 cards higher than 9 or 9s or higher. that's uh, that's perfect, and they won't float you with enough like um, six
Yeah,
five of diamonds and stuffs like that, or 10-7 of diamonds and those kind of foldings. So I think betting is fine. Against the bet, you probably want to, like, he should not bet too much. Like with 36 big blind, he raises a lot of his strong king x hands, while you can still trap some ace kings, ace king, aces, or even nines sometimes, or kings sometimes. So he should be careful betting this. And in my experience, they tend to bet like pretty wide and without considering a potential check raise. So I often see them betting with a single tray or 9x in this situation. So in that case, I think you have to apply some check raises here. I would rather do that with check 10 backdoor flush draw, and with this one, just check call. That's fine. Turn is okay. You face a small bet. We are very, very likely to be ahead. And yeah, but if he bets these kind of hands, then you see why you have to apply some check raises. I'm not saying with
yeah,
this hand, but with some like 10-8 with a backdoor flush draw, that's a perfect hand to do that with. Or um,
yeah,
even hands like 5-4 backdoor flush draw, you want to punish this behavior. Like he should be much more selective with what he bets and what he doesn't.
yeah. Like it.
All right. Yeah, these kind of trash hands are fine to raise with. If you take a look at the charts once again, like
Yeah,
50 big blinds, the biggest benefit of raising some hands like this.
yeah. You had this with James last week, I think, didn't you? Same scenario.
Um, yeah. Um, the big benefit of these kind of raises, what you see here, like not necessarily with trade use of suit, but many of these really trashy deuce x and 3x hands, is that your opponent will limp hands like queen deuce of suit, king deuce of suit, jack deuce of suit, and if you can fold those hands out, that's a big victory for Trey High. So that's the main reason. And
Yeah,
in practice, I think most people just don't trap enough in this situation in the small blind shoes. So these raises will work even better, and they don't check raise you post flop, so you will over realize even with these trashy hands. So I think a raise is very good here, and yeah, we just fold.
yeah.
All right. I don't really like this call. Is this your standard or?
No. I'd prefer to three bet rather than call three bet or fold.
Yeah.
So I don't like the fold.
Yeah, maybe you were fired up and then you just
Maybe.
wanted to play every pot, but no, like this kind of call will definitely not make you money. If
Yeah.
you do anything, then go for a big three bet, and you will fold out some hands with decent equity against your actual holding. You can even fold out some better ace x hands like ace seven offsuit and stuff like that, and many
Yeah.
offsuit broadways. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I think that's still spewy. You generally, let's take a look at once again, like what you should do against a button open uh, from the small blind, 50 big blinds. Like you generally want to three bet the middling of suit aces. Those are your like bluff combinations, or not necessarily bluff, but like the weakest part of your three bet range, and also some disconnected blockerish type suited
Yeah.
hands. Those are fine, and some like suited gappers, some offsuit broadways. So you have plenty of hands to play with here, but ace deuce of suit is not one of them.
Yeah. No, I don't like that. That's bad.
Let's check the clip which I made like. All right. Okay, so let's see what you did post flop. Not much, I guess. Just check fold. No, you check
I
fold.
don't know.
All right.
Let's skip this. Let's skip this hand. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, like this is very ambitious once again. like,
Yeah.
like if we are Annette Oberstedt and we just don't see our actual hole cards, then I would rather go for a check raise here, because that has better chance to work than in out of position float. Like I don't want to torture you by discussing this hand
I think I must have let the kids play this hand.
yeah, too long. But like one thing which I wanted to want to mention again is that you don't want to let's see one second, I got some message, whatever. So you don't want to do too many floats on low textures, because many times the turn will be an overcard, the river will be or the turn will be an overcard right away, or it goes check on the turn because it's a low card, but the river is an overcard, and then it's questionable whether you can execute a credible bluff on the river, or you will be just barreled off on the turn because it's an overcard favoring your opponent's range, and your carefully groomed plan to run an out of position float just goes down the toilet. So rather go for raises on low textures, and go for floats on high textures, probably a little bit more.
Yeah.
But the turn is a favorable one. You may want to lead out some, because this will go check many times. Your opponent will give up a lot on this turn, but you can go for a check just to see what he does, and if he overbets, then this wonderful journey is over. So
Yeah, my eyes are hurting. I need to stop looking.
whatever. Like, I'm not saying this is good by any means, but at least it shows that you were here for the victory and not to just sit out and climb up the ladders. Yeah. With these offsuit broadways, you have to be very careful which to raise and which to check, because if your opponent is tricky enough, you will have some check raises or limp raises, and then you have to fold a lot of equity many times. And on the other hand, when you raise with king nine off, especially if you raise huge with king nine off, then the limp calling range will often dominate you. So it's not like really creating any value, and if you want to bluff, then select something like Jack deuce offsuit or a deuce offsuit or whatever you want to. Let's take a look once again to the 50 big blind versus small blind limp strategy, and we can see that it's a pretty polar range. What you see is that it's quite wide for value, but some offsuit broadways like queen jack off, queen 10 off, jack 10 off, king 10 off, king 9 off, queen 9 off, which are clearly ahead of the random or weakish limping range of the small blind, are still checked because they fear a limp raise, or because they dominate more hands if it goes a limp pot than if they raise and got called, then they perform slightly worse. And your raising range, the bottom of your raising range, the bottom of your polar raising range are really trashy hands once again. So queen 4 of suit and stuffs like that. And this will work better. So you should implement a much more polar range in these situations. Okay, so you made the raise. You will fold out many hands, but most of those hands will be worse than yours. So it's better to go more polar.
Yeah,
the raise is fine. You got a call, and we made a tiny C bet on the flop. We got called. The turn is an interesting card, giving you a gut shot, but also somewhat strengthening your opponent's range. He now has some hands like Jack 10, King Jack, King 10. I think simply checking this is fine. You went for like a monster bluff.
Yeah. Well, because I was blocking the King 10 and I blocked some of his King Queens and King Jacks that he may call with, I thought it was a decent spot, seeing as he'd raise his best ace-X pre-flop. So, I mean, he has got some straights, don't get me wrong, but I think blocking him was my thinking here to carry on barreling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like what was your plan? Like, do you empty the clip or do you fire the third one if you get caught here?
Probably, especially covering him and getting very deep. I mean, he's got an okay stack, so I mean, I can't imagine he'd want to go broke with a queen or a jack in this spot. So obviously, he's never going to fold an ace, but like I say, I expect him to three bet his best ones pre-flop and maybe some of his worst ones as bluffs as well against myself, who's the big stack, who's been opening quite hard.
Mm-hmm. Like. I have same feelings than in the previous spot, that it is probably okay to do that with this holding, but I would prefer not to execute. Like if like obviously this is a winning victory, so probably most of these moves will work in this tournament, but like I have a much more careful approach, especially in the low stakes tournaments where people make like huge mistakes. I want to be very careful with my big stack, not like making only the big moves where everything is like perfect, like the blocker effect, the any kind of timing tell, or some spots where I surely know that the ranges are in my favor. In this case, you are just like kind of blindly barreling and hoping he doesn't have an ace, but he has a lot of, like with 32 big blinds, he will call with many offsuit aces, and those are a lot of combinations. Even if it's somewhat blocked by the board, those are still a lot. And yeah, I'm just afraid that
I think I could potentially, against the right opponent, maybe get some of those weaker aces to fold because he doesn't have any full houses here, and we've got ace queen, ace jack, queens jack, ace king still. Whereas I don't think he's got any of those hands.
Yeah, like with 32 big blinds, I can imagine many low stakes players to just go with ace jack here. To be honest, can't you?
Yeah, yes, well, yes and no. I mean,
Huh?
some will, some won't.
Yeah, like obviously I'm mostly rejamming that, and you are mostly rejamming that. But like if it's the final two tables and there are shorties everywhere, mm, I can see reasons behind like just flatting and letting your aggressive big stack to fire. so,
Yeah,
so yeah, I'm just a little bit afraid that we can run into too many super strong combinations and these will be like questionably plus EV. Um, if there was no flush draw, I would like this bet more because then we don't run into like annoying spots like your opponent calling with jack deuce of clubs and getting into showdown if the turn is check check, if the river is check check.
yeah.
So with the
I don't think I would check the river here. I know it might sound a bit ambitious, but I think with blocking the straight and not really thinking, well, he hasn't got no full houses, um, barring ace jack. I think I would just fire off.
Mhm. Yeah, but then I would rather choose some hands which don't block anything, as mentioned before. I checked many similar spots, and the conclusion was that those kind of bluffs, which are like absolute um, no hand no draws, like a 6-5 of diamond or something like that, those are actually more profitable triple barrel bluffs than this type of hands which block king jack, which block king queen, um, and and but that's not a lot of combinations, but he can have these from offsuit combos. So whatever, it's questionable anyways. I guess you had some reasons, like if he like snap check code on the flop, that's probably a good sign that he's not an ace x but rather a queen x trying to act strong, and therefore it is time to put some pressure on those. Also, this the same stands for the turn calls. If it's a like an almost demonstrating a strong quick call on the turn, that's usually a sign that he will fold on the river. But
Yeah,
if it's a tank call on the flop, I would be really scared to barrel. And the same goes for the turn. Many times it's either like Hollywood of calling slowly with an ace x or straight or occasional full house or something like that, or it's really a decision with some marginal hands like king queen that okay, I'm calling this and I'm going to call the river as well. And these are the reasons why you should be very careful against slow calls, and you should be uh, quite crazy against quick calls.
I'm gonna put this one in Pio. Just gonna make a quick note on my phone.
Mhm. Yeah, you are facing a 3x open from the button, who has 70 big blinds. Um, like obviously it depends a lot, like what kind of player this is. Have you seen any earlier 3x opens from him? Is this his standard size, or he has different sizes, like a small raise for that's generally for the weaker hands, and they raise big with their medium strength and strong hands. Yeah, like if you are up against someone who just raises big with all the hands which he raises from the button, then this is actually a quite okay spot to just rejam. Your hand doesn't have great playability. If you just call with an offsuit hand out of position, you invest a lot of chips, and you will many times just have to check fold on the flop. So offsuit hands are always tempting to rejam against 70 big blind opens, and if this big raise size doesn't mean too much, because this is his standard raise size with this, then we are happy with it, and we say thank you for like increasing or risk reward or bettering or risk reward ratio, and we just go crazy with the risk steals. If he's the type of guy who rather
I usually get nervous in these spots where if somebody's opening 3x, like sub 20 big blinds, I usually perceive it as quite strong.
Yeah, like my default would be to be scared and rather just stay out of the pot, not giving action to a probable strong hand. But from my like beginner students, I've seen the reasoning that I've heard the reasoning that they like raising big from this button because they experience more success with these steals if they raise big. By their experiences, if they raise small, they many times get called or they face a rejam, and therefore they use big sizes. And if you are up against someone like that, then you definitely want to rejam a lot, because then the big size doesn't mean too much. If anything, then it's a weaker hand. But readless, I would just fold and stay out of the pot. Probably this is a strong holding, and I don't want to give action. And I don't like the call. As mentioned, you will not flop good enough. Many times you are dominated, and I would just fold. On the flop, we face a huge bet. I would probably fold.
Yeah, I hope I don't. I can't remember the hand now.
And the return, check, face an all-in, and now fold, I guess. Yeah, I think we could have saved the 2 million here.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but many times when they size up on a flop where they could easily bet like 1/4, because this is a super favorable flop for them, they have no reason to size up. Then many times that's just another sign of a strong hold, better than average holding. So
yeah.
Let's see this one. Now we are on the final table, I guess. Yep.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And let's see your position. So what you mainly want to do when you get to the final table, and if you don't have too many other tables, and you can pay attention. First of all, you want to take a deep breath and look for the stacks, like what is your stack position, who you can put pressure on, who you cannot really put pressure on. So usually the smallest stack will be more happy to risk his chips, by the middling stacks. The second stack, the third stack will have a lot to lose, so you generally want to apply the most pressure on them. And what you also want to do is run some shard scope searches. Is that your habit to run?
Yeah, I do. I don't have a subscription, so I usually use my 5 free searches for final table. So I usually just pick the top 5 stacks. But I mean, I should get a subscription. Really, it doesn't cost a lot.
Yeah, like I highly recommend doing so. And if you are interested, like I have a blog, checkthiside.com.
Yeah.
And
I've read that about how to use shard scope effectively.
Yeah, like mainly what you want to figure out is who is conscious ICM wise and who is not. And I gave you quite a few tips in this blog post, how to, like, you don't have any direct statistics on this, but there are a lot of like hints, a lot of statistics which correlate with this behavior. So if someone is ICM conscious, you can put a lot of pressure on them in certain spots, while if someone is not, then you make a mistake by putting too much pressure on them because you also risk your own chips.
Yeah.
And yeah, like Kovmiki is asking, what the fuck is this graph? Yeah, I just found it online. Yeah, probably a Sunday Million winner, like a short story. All right. Um, yeah, like in this case, the guy on the big blind is one of the shortest stacks, but there are a lot of guys with similar stacks. So I can imagine big raise being profitable here. Once again, you put them in almost like all-in fold position with a 3.5x raise. So although my initial reaction, my original reaction was to fold this super weak holding, probably you can get away with the raise and you can make profit with the raise. I like it. Yeah, especially if you are up against someone who you see is a scared money or any other reason you have to make this raise. Like generally, the fold big blind to steal is one of the stats which shows you quite early like who is the kind of guy who is willing to put some chips in with marginal holdings, and this often correlates with the fold to 3-bet statistics, the floating stats like fold to c-bet, the fold to check raise stats, which are like more rare cases. So those kind of statistics will add up much later than the fold big blind versus tail stat. So this is a statistic which you definitely want to have in your original HUD without any pop-up. You should see like the who folds a lot from the big blind and who doesn't.
Yeah, I don't have that on my HUD, but this is party poker, so
Yeah. It's party poker, so so you don't have a stat unless you are Russian or.
yeah.
All right, very standard call, and very standard call on the flop as well. Like, you don't want to check raise probably. But obviously by check raising you can fold out some hands like Queen 10, which have good playability, can barrel you off many times, but you rather want to check raise. If you do any check raising, then you rather want to check raise something like tray 4 with backdoor flush draw, blocking some pocket raise, ace tray, and then being really vulnerable to any overcount, because the king gives you some extra like money making options. If a king comes, he will probably barrel, put some additional chips in really bad, and yeah, this makes this holding rather a check call. The turn is really bad for us, and the river is interesting. I'm just a little bit tempted to turn this into a bluff. Like, what is your weakest combination you get here?
It's probably some kind of 3x, maybe 4-5.
Yeah, but 4 or 5 is a better hand than this one.
Oh yeah, so yeah, that'll be a better pair. Yeah, probably the 3x. 3x stuff I defend, probably my weakest hands.
Yeah, like also on the turn, I think most of the time they will barrel their flush draws. So even though we like Kovmik is asking why standard call on the flop, I think this is a fold, because if turn is not held, we just burn the chips or not. Like as we can see, the turn didn't help, and there was no betting going on. So the flop is quite like missing any draws. So your opponent will often assume that you have ace-x hands and just give up if they don't pick up any equity on the turn. So I think this is a very fine call on the turn, on the flop, and also you can call on spade turns and make some really surprising, like river trips, going with the turn flush draw and rivering trips and winning a huge pot, or turning a king and winning a huge pot. That's fine. Um, I think folding on the flop would be really weak. So
I think if we fold the flop, then he's just gonna see bet everything, and then always bluffs make money on us.
Excuse me, could you repeat it?
If we fold a three on the flop every time, then this player could just auto c bet, and all of his bluffs would just make money against us.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Obviously, we want to avoid being exploited here, but we are going to be exploited no matter what. Like on these textures, which are so favorable for them, they will probably make auto profit no matter what. Like even if you want to do a lot of defense, defending on this flop, you will probably lose money. He will make auto profit. He can see bet range here, and you cannot do much against it, but obviously he will make more money with his bluffs if you fold these kind of holdings. But more like the biggest part of the reason is that we have backdoor flush draw, which helps a lot. Many times we can get to the river. All right, yeah. So on the river, I think he very very rarely has flushes. But he has some queen x hands, some pocket sevens, some pocket sixes, king 10, king jack. He can have maybe sometimes some jack 10, but most of the time I expect them to barrel. But yeah, I think we have to turn this into a bluff. We have some flushes, we have some two pairs. We even have some sets probably. So I would turn this into a bluff. One way to turn this into a bluff, like are you turning this into a bluff or making a blocker bet, or?
it's more of a blocker bet, because I didn't want to face a big bet with his checked back ace-x and then be in a tricky spot. So it was more of a blocker bet, and hopefully he'll just obviously fold out his air, but just basically putting a bit of pressure on his 9x and just blocking, like I say, his bluffs.
Hmm. Well, like normally you want to make a block bet when if you don't make a block, like the most important condition for a block bet is for your opponent to have a capped range, not to have really strong hands. He can raise your block bet, but if he has some like medium strength hands which he can uh, value bet big size, even though he has capped range, he can, like against the check, he could value bet a medium strength hand, but against the tiny bet he cannot raise and reopen the betting ground. That's condition number one to make a successful block bet. But also the main consideration for a block bet is that you want to avoid your opponent to make medium-sized thin value bets against you, combined with some bluffs, making a balanced bet against you and making some extra profit with his bluffs. But I think in this situation, um, especially in the final table, mid stacks versus a big stack, we can assume that they will not bluff enough. So if we only bet this to block bet, I think he will um, like it's almost useless because he will not bluff enough. He will not find the creative bluffs here. He mostly just will have some hands like sevens, sixes, eights, queen x, 9x, etc., and that's it. And he will check those down, and very rarely will he find any bluffs for that. Bet check bet is not too frequent, especially on this run out. So I don't really like the blocking bet. if anything, I would turn this into a bluff with a somewhat bigger bet. The question is whether it is worth targeting a queen x, which is a very, very likely holding of his. I would try to do that and go for an overbet, a slight overbet, like 3.9 million. I think that will be called less than 10% of the time here, and folding out many, many, many better hands which don't even consider calling. Yeah, like obviously it's okay, not a big deal, but I still think that in this particular spot he will just not bluff enough, so you don't really need the blocking bet. Yeah, I would like to be much more polar in this spot, but I still think like you will very rarely face an all-in bet here.
Yeah.
So I'm not super worried that he will take something like sevens and shove it into your face. That will not happen too much. But maybe ace queen will probably just call, and then you force some guys out of the pot. I think it's okay. I prefer playing small ball a bit more.
Yeah.
But if he's a loose opener, then 3-betting is fine, and probably folding to an all-in.
I thought it was quite good because it folds a lot of his like decent equity hands. I don't think he'd necessarily want to continue with King Jack as suited there, for example. Plus, with the 15 big blinds that behind me, I didn't want to give him any good price for a rejam, so I decided to 3-bet the eights there.
Yeah, that's like not to my standards, but taking a deeper look at it, I like it, because normally you don't want to 3-bet eights with 40 big blinds, because your opponent may jams many flipping hands and some worse pocket pairs into you, so you kind of want to call, but you do questionably against the overall range, and that's why normally we don't want to do 3-bets like that. But given the circumstances that you are putting a huge pressure on the opener, I think it's fine, because he will react very honestly. All right, we got a call and we got a flop where we completely missed. We actually blocked some of the hands which we could fold out, so I think checking is fine. You decided to make a bet. Like, obviously he will have some air type hands, but once again, he will have king jack of he can't have king jack of club, he can't have queen jack of club because you have the jack of club. He can't have many of the ace x of club combinations, so this making your bet like very questionable. Yeah. Sam Oldfield arrived. He's also a regular to stream. Welcome, Sam. Good to have you here. Yep. We are on the final table already, Sam. So we see some action. Hattie is really putting pressure on the guys. So good job so far. And yeah,